Herod heard of the great things that Jesus was doing because the people were talking about the many things that were happening. He thought that John the Baptist was raised back from the dead. So he was afraid because he had had John the Baptist put to death because of the wishes of his wife. After that, the disciples buried John the Baptist. And then Jesus brought the disciples out to a desert place for a period of time. There, he was teaching them, and at evening time, there was no food around, and they found the loaves and the fishes of the little boy and fed the 5,000. We're going to read about it from Matthew chapter 14, beginning at verse 13. When Jesus heard it, he departed from there by boat to a desert place by himself. But when the multitude heard it, they followed him on foot from the cities. And when Jesus went out, he saw a great multitude, and he was moved with compassion for them, and he healed their sick. When it was evening, his disciples came to him, saying, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is already late. Send the multitude away that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." But Jesus said to them, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "We have here only 5 loaves and 2 fish." He said, "Bring them here to me." Then he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and broke and gave the loaves to the disciples, and the disciples gave to the multitude. So they all ate and were filled, and they took up 12 baskets full of fragments that remained. Now those who had eaten were about 5,000 men, besides the women and the children. Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side he sent the multitude away. When he had sent the multitude away, he went up on a mountain by himself to pray. Now when evening come, he was alone there. And now here is Ari Bar David to tell us about this great incident in the life of Jesus.
So, we have heard the story of feeding of the 5,000. This was the version of Matthew. Let us remember that feeding the 5,000 is mentioned in the 4 Gospels. In Matthew, as we saw now, but also in Mark chapter 6, in John chapter 6, and even in Luke chapter 9. In order to see the full picture of what happened here, we need the 4 sources, the 4 Gospels, because every one of them is adding something special to this. So let us start. What happened? What is the last event that happened before feeding the 5,000? 3 of the Gospels are mentioning that this was the beheading of John the Baptist. Let's remember John the Baptist, the most close man in a way to the Lord. His cousin was beheaded. And even for the Lord Yeshua, it was hard to hear it. And not only for him, for all the disciples. This is the first time that one of them is giving his life. I mean, the first martyr. And the Lord felt that they need time to be alone. Not only because he was beheaded, but also they didn't have their own time. One of the Gospels say they didn't have time even to eat orderly. So it starts by this, that Jesus decided to go to a place to be alone. It's important. He wanted to be alone means to go to a place that usually people are not around him. Where was the place that most of the time Jesus spent? In Carpernaum. This was his home. And that's why in Carpernaum, wherever he went, people found him. Even early in the morning, even at night, they found him, shouting, shouting to him, Son of David, Yeshua, right? Son of David, have mercy on me. So we understand that he went to a place that he expected to be more alone with his close disciples. Now, he took the boat from Carpernaum and decided to come to this side. One of the Gospels says this is the Sea of Tiberias, or the Sea of Gennesaret, and actually we are on the west side of the Sea of Galilee. But look what happens. There are two big cities. One is Tiberias, one is Magdala, and it's written in another Gospel that when the people in the cities, they saw him coming, rolling with the boat, they recognized his boat, immediately they were running on their legs by foot, not by boat, in order to meet him in the place that he is landing. And as you see around us, we are now in the evening time. We decided to make as much as possible these photos in the real time of the day. Look, the sun is setting far away in Mediterranean. We are down in the valley of the Sea of Galilee, which is 600 feet under water level, under the Mediterranean. So look how beautiful the evening time is. And another Gospels, it says, in John actually, that this happened short time before the Passover. So, look, it says that short time, now the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was near. Next week, we are going to celebrate the Passover in Israel. So this is exactly the time, and the time of the day, and the time of the month when this happened. Look how important it is for me that you will see what we see. All is flowers, shining. Not only this, to the right we have a spring of living water. So this would be a perfect place for the people to gather. And they spend the time here, hearing from Jesus, till evening time arrived. Now what the disciples said? They said, let us send them to the cities. Let me tell you, from here to Magdala, it will be maybe half an hour walk. From here to Tiberias, maybe 2 hour walk, or 1.5 hours. So let them go, eat something, and then we continue. But you see what happens? You see what happens? Jesus doesn't say that it is too far from them to go or something like this. He just offered them. You give them to eat. In one of the Gospels, we see that he pointed to a special one of the group, right? And look what he says in the Gospel of John. He pointed to Philippus. Where shall we buy bread for all this group that everyone will eat? Now, it's written that he said it in order to test him. But Philippus, with all the wisdom and the knowledge that he had, gave Jesus advice. And he answered, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may have a little. Look, the question of Yeshua and the answer of Philippus. How many times in our life we do exactly the same? He asked a question and he wants an answer of one word, but we are helping him. Minimum 200 denarii we have for bread. 2 million we need for building another house for the church. From where we will get this? We need at least 3 years to send him to study, to be expert. We are adding all kinds of human suggestions, but this was not a question of the Lord. And then Andre, the brother of Simon Kepha, even added, oh, we have a child here. And this child, we found with him 5 little piece of bread and 2 fish. But look, he's adding, like sarcastic, What are they among so many? The disciples forgot totally who is standing among them. But look, it happens to us again and again. Our natural character is forgetting who is Yeshua. This is true. We so many times adding things that if Jesus was around us, we say, where is your faith? How you're talking? You're talking like people of this world. This is the truth. So Jesus even didn't answer them. What he did, look, I go to John. He just said to the people, sit down. And in one of the Gospels, he said they sat down on the grass. And he divided them in groups of 50 and 100. I like it so much. This was a principle in my life. I was guiding all kinds of groups, young people, soldiers, now tourists. Whenever I feed, whenever there is time to eat, the people are sitting. And then I divide them in groups, group A, B, C, D, and I call group A to come to be the first. Sometimes there are only 10 people, sometimes 5 people, sometimes they can be 50 people. But when group A is eating, all the rest are waiting. And then I invite group B, then C, and so on. You never give food to people when they are standing and almost fighting who will be the first one to get. There's so much wisdom in the way that the Lord fed them. And after they were sitting, what he did, it's written that he lifted his eyes up to heaven and he blessed the food. We find a kind of a principle. Whenever Jesus is in open area like we are now, he is lifting his eyes to heaven. And we understand he has open eyes, of course, to his Father and pray. The same he did when he was on the roof of the upper room. And he prayed for the disciples. We speak about John 17. It's written that he lifted his eyes to heaven and prayed. And only after he prayed for the food, he was cutting. He gave to the disciples, and the disciples continue and gave it to the multitudes. And look, all the pieces that remind, all the scrambles, he gave an order to gather them. And they put them in 12 baskets. I want to say again something from my life. I am one brother of 7 brothers. My father and mother were the first family of believers in this country. We were living in Jerusalem during the independent war, during the time that Jerusalem was under a siege. There was no food. And we, all the family, all our childhood, it was a situation there was no food around. We never left food without finishing eating it. I mean, we took till the last scramble. And we didn't feel poor by doing it. We felt that we are doing what the Lord did. He collected the scrambles and put them in 12 baskets. So this was such a lesson, what we passed in Jerusalem, there, far away. And till today, all my life, I'm keeping this rule. Whatever is on the plate, you should eat it. You should finish it. Look, there's so much that I studied myself. And of course, all of us, from what happened here, in this place. And let us remember that when Jesus fed them, he fed them double-wise. First spiritually, and then physically. And this is the way that he's feeding us today, spiritually and physically. And let us remember not to give him advices how to do it. Just wait till he will show us how he wants to feed us. And once we have this patience, we will find ourselves that we are renewed by His feeding. No one else in the world can renew us, refresh us like our Lord, Yeshua the Messiah.